Well, with me now to review the Boxing Day papers is the journalist and author Yasmin Alibhai-Brown and the sociologist Ashley Frawley. Lovely to see you both. Thanks a lot for joining us. Yasmin, to you first, the front of the Telegraph, lots of the papers covering the King's speech. We were just talking about it a short while ago. What did you make of it? Do you think he got the tone right?
I didn't watch it. I have to say I'm not a royalist. But the Daily Telegraph, of course, is a very establishment paper, and it's gone into detail about how he expressed concern for those going through this cost of living crisis and the sympathy he feels. And I just think it's a bit like us clapping for nurses, isn't it? Clapping, you can't eat claps, you can't survive on claps, you can't eat sympathy. It would have been good if he'd announced a pile of money from the new king to food banks, say, to help them through this crisis. They are one of the most richest clans in the country. So I'm really sorry if I don't mean to disrespect people who are monarchists, but I thought this really wasn't right for the times we're living in.
Ashley, what did you make of it? Did it stick in your throat?
I mean, it was a fairly safe speech, as it would be. I mean, it's a Christmas it's a Christmas message, and so he paid tribute to the areas of society which are struggling at the moment, as one might expect. And of course, it's going to strike a lot of people as hollow when someone who is so wealthy basically offers us kind words. I do kind of agree with that, but this is it's a Christmas message, and it's a lot of emptiness about light and hope and all these sorts of things. And I suppose there's only so much expectation one can have.
The front of the Sun as well, isn't it, Ashley, is one of the ones that you picked out. And lots of pictures on the fronts of the papers also of the royal family at Sandringham and their first Christmas service with the King at the helm.
Yes, it's very much trying to put forward a very positive picture of the royal family, downplaying some of the drama of recent months. And I'm not sure that, I mean, for me, it just seems quite an obvious, media show to kind of put forward this harmonious picture of the royal family and the future king. And but everybody knows the subtext that's being very, very carefully orchestrated here, which is that there's a lot of drama going on. There's a lot of drama going on generally in the country, but there's a lot of drama going on in the royal family that they are trying very, very hard to pretend perhaps doesn't exist. And I'm not sure the country will necessarily buy it. But I do wish them a happy Christmas as much as anyone would.
Okay. Well, let's move away from the King's speech. And Yasmin, you go on to the front of The Guardian. And this is a story about more dads staying at home as a result of COVID, more dads taking on the childcare responsibilities and the home care responsibilities.
Yeah, and this is kind of an accidental thing that has happened because of the years of lockdown and then working from home. And a lot of people, men and women, are still working from home. And one of the sort of extraordinary developments out of this often happens in history. One thing leads to another. And what seems to have happened is that more dads are not only working from home, but taking more responsibility for the children. And according to the ONS, for example, the numbers are higher of the dads who are kind of finding also that they've been missing out, which I find the most interesting and affirming things in this story. That the interviews, dad saying, I used to go before they woke up, the kids woke up, hardly saw them. Now I take my daughters to school, and it's changed my life. So I think if this carries on, it's a very good thing. But never forget, it's still the mums doing the majority of the work. Often unsung, actually. Too often unsung.
Well, indeed, the numbers going up. It was 1 in 14 men who did that caring role, and now it's 1 in 9. So it is still a very small proportion, but it is definitely at least evening out a little bit, which is great news. Ashley, your next story also about childcare, actually, in children. This is a story inside the Mirror, and this is Labour's plan for more free childcare for families. What are they proposing?
Yes, so there are talks that Labour is drawing up plans for a major expansion of free childcare that could be worth around £6 billion per year. And one of the ideas being tabled is to make 30 hours free childcare per week universal for parents of all 2, 3, and 4-year-olds. And that, of course, is up from currently 3 and 4-year-olds only get 30 hours if their parents work at least 16 hours per week. Otherwise, they get 15. Now, of course, there are still going to be gaps here, but this is one of the areas in which policy can make a huge impact, and it's obvious this is why Labour is interested in it. For one thing, one area in which you can grow the economy is by getting more people to go into work, and in particular to get more women into work. And you can also attempt to close the gender pay gap, as a lot of women will leave the workplace when it just doesn't pay, when childcare is simply too expensive. They'll either work part time or they will leave altogether. Of course, the pay gap being when women, part of it being when women work fewer hours. On the other hand, we have to be really careful about these kinds of policies because a lot of countries have increased childcare with the idea of getting more women into work. And the idea is that by getting women to work, you can pull back other forms of support for families, and you improve the condition of families through the marketplace. But what can happen is if you are making things a lot harder on a lot of different fronts and you push women into work, you can push women into insecure work, poorly paid work. And this can mean that you actually widen inequalities between women of different social classes. And this is what we've seen across Europe in recent years. And so we have to be careful that we have to keep our eyes open to make sure that a policy that sounds good on the front of it or on the face of it isn't actually an attempt to cut welfare elsewhere.
Interesting way of looking at it, Ashley. Thanks very much for that. Yasmin, back to COVID. You've picked this story about COVID data, and it's going to change. I mean, they're going to stop announcing the R rate. I mean, in all fairness, have any of us been paying attention to the R rate really recently at all?
No, and I think this is quite disturbing news, actually, because we can see this week and the week before, the numbers of COVID cases and even hospitalization cases are going up. We've entered the period of winter, and with all the cost of living crisis and so on, we've got more people getting colds and flu, and we're getting more people getting COVID. And I think there's something very wrong in giving a message to the people that it's over, it's fine, we're living with COVID, we don't need to give you the information. I think it's a big mistake, and it's being done for the wrong reasons, because Rishi Sunak has all the time he's been in government, and not all the time he's been in prime minister, has hated lockdown, has hated the fact that COVID came along and interrupted the capitalist cycle. But, it happened, and it's happening again around the world. China is now seeing huge numbers of fatalities. We are interconnected. So I think this is a terrible policy.
Okay. Ashley, your thoughts?
We have to understand that, of course, what's happening around the world is going to be a little bit different than what's going to hit us at home. Obviously, we've had a very effective vaccination program. We have built up an enormous amount of immunity that China has not. So we have to be a little bit careful in drawing these kinds of conclusions globally versus what might happen at home.
Okay. Ashley and Yasmin, thank you both very much.